Whoa, it's Wulzy. Welcome to episode 2 of Subscriber Styles, where I play a few level requests from my Google form, which you can find in my server or when I'm live on Twitch. I pick out a level and build a part of a level in that style. I'm gonna hop straight into the first level of today, Water or Something by Fletzer using At Sea by Lawn Reality. It looks like we've actually picked out a banger straight away. I love that block effect right there, that's amazing. Okay. This could just be the level that I pick, honestly, because this block design is really intriguing. I do want to try out a style like this. There's a lot of moody glow here and there that's like obscuring the edges of the screen, and some areas in the middle right there, quite difficult to see at times. I like that hook that sends you into the water. Damn, that rain is smooth as well. Okay, this is sick. It's like a mix of effect, art. It kind of reminds me of something that Taman would make because everything is really simple, but the surroundings are all there. It's like making the most of the in-game assets right there. Wow. Okay, this is impressive. I might pick out a couple of parts of this level to influence my own. That's a sick fake as well. I like that. All right, that's a neat end screen too with all the rocks moving. Okay, I'm going to choose this one right off the bat. Normally I would play a couple on this series, but I think this is the one for me. So it starts off looking quite cloudy. There's a couple of pulsing objects in the background. The highlight, obviously, is that effect inside the blocks, which is using multiple slopes stacked on top of each other to make that glimmering effect. I'm going to be using the song Asleep Again by Anderson187, which is a really chill, laid-back, lo-fi sounding song. The gameplay in that level was really smooth. I need to make sure that I get something that I can sync to. I think this is just about right for what I'm going for. I'm making sure that I put all of my structures in boxes, just like the original. Then underneath, I can underlay a design that maybe has an effect in it other than the little slope flickering thing. I specifically remember liking one of the fakes in the level that we played in the beginning of the video, so I've decided to add one right here with the yellow pad. You gotta use the pink pad to skip it. I like the idea of having these stretched slopes and then having spikes on either side that you're not supposed to hit. It stops my structures just being like single little boxes or two wide boxes like that. I've done something funky with the following gameplay using a H block to hit your head on the bottom of this block, fall through this gap in the middle, then above this little cube there is a J block which stops you from jumping again after you hit the blue orb. So in full speed you jump right here, fall through, and then hit the blue orb to bounce onto the other side. I don't know why that sentence was so hard to say. I've been able to make some pretty tight structuring around all of this, which is gonna allow for a lot of that block effect to be on screen at once. And since it's a lot of structuring, I will also be able to have a lot of underlay design. I'm going to make the background a dark turquoise using the gradient background. And I think my first priority is going to be to make the cloudy look on the ground. And then I'll probably put some other glow around orbs and maybe some pillars in between where there's no objects. Next, free color channel, copying the color of the background with plus 0.1 brightness, maybe? That looks about right to me. If I just set that to B4 way down at the back and then don't fade, don't enter. I guess I'll just group this on group 2 and then set a move trigger at the very beginning that sets it to lock to the X-axis forever, just for this scenario. Let's put group 2 in there. We'll move that towards the player, maybe 400 backwards on the X, not forwards. That was almost a big mistake. Just for about 10 seconds because that's how long the level is. We'll also put an alpha trigger to fade that on, but to do that we need to initially turn it off, which is setting it to 0 opacity. There we go. I've also added some larger glow, which is all on group 3, half opacity. It's not going to move along with the rest, but it's just going to kind of sit there at the bottom. I'm going to make some pulses for it along with the background, some pulses with alpha triggers like this, so they'll fade up to full opacity and fade right the way back down to 0.5. To perfectly arrange these triggers, what I'm going to do is place one on the first beat, one on the last beat, copy paste it 4 more times because there are 6 total beats minus the 2 on the ends, then a line on the X. So as you can see, they're evenly spaced, just like the beats in the song. I can just copy paste and put them back down to 0.5 like I did earlier, just for a test. So there's some subtle glow at the bottom, which is very gradually increasing in its opacity when the beats of the song happen. I'm going to bounce off of these colors with some new pulsing objects that are going to be on group 3. and the copy color, exactly the same as the big scaled up glow, which I've also placed around the orbs, as you can see. So I'm scattering these around, not just in pillars. As you can see, I've connected a couple of blocks like that. Like, I've lined the top of some objects here and there as well. Alright, I've kind of set the scene with the glow and the pulsing object, adding some surroundings. Now it's time to get to the nitty gritty, which is going to be the block design. The base block is just going to be basic right there. B2, don't fade, don't enter. But above that, we're going to add some glow, which is going to use background blending on color channel 3, overlaying it on T1, sharing don't fade and don't enter, and it's going to have group 3, so it flashes light, just like the background. We're just going to add it on top like that on a new editor layer, so I can individually select some of them for a little twinkling effect that I'm planning to do. There's no coordinated pattern for this, I'm just randomly selecting them out. There we go. Link these. Get rid of group 3 and add group 4 instead. I'm going to select these group 3 pulses, copy paste them, move them upwards, and change them to white and group 4. Probably increasing the fade time as well, just very slightly, so it lingers that little bit longer and it stays visible all the way until the next pulse. And I'm going to add a rotation trigger for every single pulse trigger right here. Group 4, it doesn't need a center because it will just use each and every block as its own center, so I don't have to make like a billion groups and stuff. 0 move time, 90-degree rotation. I'm just going to copy paste that and put that on every single pulse trigger for group 4. So this immediately is just altering the perspective of the glow pulse that's on them, and it kind of washes that specific block out. On a new editor layer now, I'm going to be adding some dark glow behind the box object, not the pillars, just the boxes that are kind of floating, to add more darkness into the level. So we'll add a black color channel. We'll put this on B3. Just need to make sure I get these on the perfect scale so it's consistent between 1 and 2 blocks like that. Okay, I have decided that I'm going to take all of the glow pieces away from group 3 and give them their own group to pulse with. So I'm going to select every second of these glow objects, roughly. It doesn't have to be exact, really. Just like that. Link these together, give them a new group 5. I don't really know how, but I ended up changing this to group 7, and group 5 never got used for the whole level. It doesn't really make sense to me, but that's how it was. I'm going to copy the pulse triggers for group 4 once again. Then I'm going to change them to group 6. Put it as a light blue, which is going to contrast that turquoise a little bit. Remove that extra fade time. And then I am going to half space this by a block, so there's a slight delay in the way these light up, as you can see. Then group 7 can be offset another half a block, and it can have a bit more of a green tint to it instead of the blue. The base blocks are on B2. Instead, I'm going to put them quite far up B3, copy paste them, add them to a new editor layer. I think 5 is free now. We can put these on B1, and then I'm going to move these glow pieces down to B2, and that should be good. So the glow shouldn't be as visible, which is exactly what I want. And the fact that these objects are double stacked makes it so the dark areas of the blocks are now extremely dark. Basically, it's just like a sandwich that the glow is going in between, and it's much more of a difference to the light areas now. And now, this is the most tedious part. I'm going to start lining the blocks with mini objects like so, just placed in random positions. I've quite literally scribbled on some of these blocks, as you can tell with this one and the one above. They're going to initially be on black blending, which makes them invisible until they get one of the pulsing groups. So when these objects are placed on a group 4, which pulses to white, underneath the top layer of these objects, the blocks look very fragmented, and I'm planning to add a layer on top instead of all being underneath, because it would just get ridiculous and indistinguishable. Incoherent, one might say. This is looking better than I expected, I'm not gonna lie. The next thing I've done is copied the values from this pulse trigger and added it to a new group 8, which is an extremely short pulse trigger. And I've done the same for the other trigger. As you can see, the green's in for group 9. Once I've edited the fade times to my preference, I can start adding those pulsing slope effects that we saw in the previous level on top of the blocks, just like that. As you can see, it's overlaying the block, it's on T1, and when it's in motion, it's going to kind of twinkle on the sides. It's just important that all of these designs start off on black blending, so they're invisible until the pulses happen. I've put these onto the small cubes and the rectangles that aren't connected to the ground. I mean, the big ones are still there. That's because I've realized how the other creators had to do this, because obviously, so I can keep it for the small object, but for the other ones, I am going to have to use a regular pattern that I can put across multiple structures, if you know what I mean. So I'll take this one, put it on black blending, put it on T1 like the rest, and give it maybe group 8. and I'm just going to have to individually put these patterns on some of the blocks. So yeah, it's going to take a little while. Hey, this is looking good. It doesn't resemble the original too much, but I've took that idea of the pulsing slopes and the blocks for sure. I'm going to put my own twists on it now by pulsing the object lines to black. Underneath the final pulse trigger right here for this object line, I've added a bunch of alpha triggers on a 0.1 fade time, that should be. If I individually selected them, it would show that. That sets them to 0 opacity, so all of the blocks pulse black right at the very end. I think it's a sick way to kill all of that color and completely contradict it. I could also probably do that for color channel 3. Instead of having ground spikes cover the ground the entire time, I'm just going to scale them up and place them in front of some of the objects right here on T2. Don't fade, don't enter. Because I got to remember, the ground is just black, so it blends in that way. The original's been featured in the time that I've made this. Okay, that's cool. I just want to check what he did for the other surroundings. So there's a couple of low opacity blocks there. There's a couple of those pulsing sticks. I don't know what they're called. Now, because I've left spaces on the ground, I have a lot of opportunities to put these in. Just swapping between player color 1 and player color 2. Placing some base blocks behind these structures. The exact same blocks that are used in the original, but I'm layering them behind this cloudy glow, as you can see. All of these base blocks are on the same color, but they're getting like dragged into the background with that big glow that I put around the orb. The original plan for this was to have a secondary effect underneath the main, but since the main blocks are so bright, I don't think it makes sense to do that. I was also going to use the big pillars to have another secondary design like these ones carried over into the main design to kind of mesh them a bit more. But I like the way this turned out instead. This has probably been one of the most confusing building videos that I've made in recent times, but hopefully it makes sense. I mean, you can definitely tell where the foreground in the blocks comes from, at least. If you don't get the weird underlay glow thing, then it doesn't really matter. Just adding a couple of gradient things for the background right now, setting it way back down to the bottom of B4, along with some other scaled up objects that I've placed on half opacity using group 5. You can see what this is doing if I just stack the gradient right there. Honestly, maybe group 5 is not the best for this. Yeah, there we go. On don't fade and don't enter, I'm just slotting this into the background here and there where it makes sense. I think this is pretty much done, honestly. I was going to add a lot more pulsing details, some arrows that reuse the same pulsing groups, but no one wants to see that. I'm pretty much done with the main concepts with this. I'm happy with how it turned out as well. I think it's sick. I just need to make sure that the whole level fades off after it's done. And that's that. Subscriber Styles Episode 2. Thank you to Fletzer for being the original creator of Water or Something. It was a very inspiring level, as you can see. This block design has turned out really well. I'm glad that I could use that slope effect in the beginning. I think you did it better, but I think our levels work well in their own ways. Obviously, yours is more thematically tied, whereas mine's just a random piece of a level. But yeah, that was fun. Thank you for watching this episode of Subscriber Styles. Check the links in the description, leave a like and subscribe, and have a good day.